Hello, welcome. I got like I said, I'm in here. It's cold, it's windy, but I'm here. I got blown right into the studio, and I'm ready to give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to don't even ask. Just go to the website. You can see all the top stories that made it on the website. I came in here. There's a lot happening in the world. Questions, but I'm hoping I can give you some answers. If you're new to the platform of this show, this is a show where I give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week. It is my supreme duty as a child. I was put up to the clouds and put up to the sun, and it was foretold that this child would be the one to mediate when there was something going on between the right and the left. There would be one young lad named Sir West that would stay in the middle and try not to interfere with any of the chaos and corruption that goes on in the world, but stay in the middle. And I'm telling you, folks, there's news, and I've got it. I've got 8 stories and things that are happening that may change the way you think, may change the way you feel, but my ultimate goal is to please you, to give you a good feeling. If you want to contribute during the show in any way, all you have to do is go to METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. I've seen a lot in my 36 years on this planet. And I'm telling you, nothing. They say you get older and wiser, and the more you grow, the more you see, the more you just become desensitized to some of the things. But folks, I'm actually starting to believe that I've seen a lot, and that's what today's show is about. But there is some help, some things that I may have found out that maybe we are headed in a direction to where there's reasoning for all this. There's reason, and for some people who don't feel like they have a purpose in this world, I think that I believe that there's something happening. I believe that there's something designed this. So, like I said, if you want to contribute in any way during the show, all you have to do is go to the website, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, method8.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something, or just sponsor a program. We have a fundraiser next weekend. We have them every first Saturday of the month. We'll be having, if your kids play any sports, or if you just want to bring the family out, play some ball, we're 50-50 community basketball tournaments, and that'll be at the Jewish Community Center on the north side of Youngstown. If you want to see what stories almost made it, just go to the website. They're in there. If you want to stop by the office to get some services done for the community, every contribution goes back into the community. You can stop at 5648 Market Street, Boardman, Ohio. I'm there 10 to 6 Monday through Friday, helping out, doing the best I can to keep things afloat. Let me read the disclaimer really fast before I get into the top 8. These top 8 stories are only documented for records and to highlight topics for those in the business of talk radio, talk media, and those who just want to stay informed. Now, folks, it's the final show after for this Black History Month. I don't want to leave that out, so let's get into it. And before I get into it, I'm going to share a Black History story, and then I'll get to the top 8. A few years back, I was scammed by. This is one of the stories, but this is a special story for Black History. I was scammed by some Nigerians, and it was a frightening time because I was just getting out of the military, and when you're getting out of the military, you don't have a lot. You don't have a lot of resources. You have the VA, you have the Veterans Commission, and that's it. Well, being in poverty, I was so I wanted to help my family out so much. We did not grow up with much. And I was scammed by some Nigerians, African brothers, and I thought the story would be just kind of comical, just not only comical, but it would be kind of to shine light on the fact that everybody's so worried about racial issues, and we're in Black History Month. And how the story turned out is leads us to story number 1, which is the cost of signing up for the military. That's the story number 1. That's the first story that made it to the Mediator. Well, after getting out, I went to the bank. And this, if you know how the scam artists work, you get a phishing email, you respond. So I went to the bank, and the guy from Nigeria sent me these money orders, and and he made it known that he was African, and he sent me these. I don't know if they were fake pictures of him and his family and everything. So I'm thinking this guy is really like a friend, and I really inherited this money because that's what the phishing email said. And I fell for it, and I was scammed. I was in Home Savings and Loan, and the teller, and when they see me on camera, and I felt sorry for myself. I had reached the point as a veteran where I had nothing left, and I did not know how things worked at the time. I was young. I was probably maybe I think when I got out I was probably about 22, 21, and I was just desperate. I was desperate. And that's why story number one is amazing, because military people are still going through it. Not just military veterans, but people who are just in the reserves, young Americans, as is a good way to put it. And I often wondered. I was just talking to Gary, one of the board officers here, and at the time, now that I'm 36, and I can look back on it, and you wonder to yourself, does God have a plan? Does God? And I when I was scammed in this story, and I couldn't provide for my family. All I wanted to do was get. I thought this $1 million or whatever this guy from overseas was claiming that he was going to send me. I thought this was going to solve all of my problems, and I thought it was going to bring me and my family out of poverty. I thought it was going to help. This is what scam artists feed off of. They prey off people who have nothing. And it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot, and I was gonna I was gonna help out the churches. I had plans, big plans, but my heart was in the right place. And what brought me across it, the reason why story number one, the cost of signing up for the military, is so pivotal, is because they're talking about how military families are experiencing high stress, anxiety, and unemployment. And I came across a few stories about this, and it at that particular time I ended up signing up for the Postal Service. I got a job, and it was a rebound from almost getting into a lot of trouble, getting scammed and falling into a vet prey. They even sent out an FBI agent. I got interrogated and everything. It was one of the most embarrassingest things. But I've always tried to encourage myself, but I could joke about it now, but back then but this is what people who are desperate go through. And when you serve and you feel like you've given a service to any country, not just the United States, and you feel like that not only entitled to a better life. And this is the problem that we're facing, and this is why the top 8 stories that made it in this week deal with a lot of these issues of Trump people, especially people from poverty trying to find a better life. And we just had the stories about the federal employees who had to face the government shutdown, and these stories are becoming a really big thing, especially with leadership, and that's the a lot of they're saying that they don't feel that the leadership that we have in this country right now understand what it's like for families who are struggling or families who are living in poverty. And story number one, when it comes to military families, because of the fact that the military is a killing business. Some people don't make it out. Some people don't make it out with all their limbs. And especially during war times, it's a very stressful job. You're talking about how families, when they get married in the military, people get their hearts broken. The suicide rates are up. So I just always try to remember back then. But that's why story number one I see these stories. They've been circulating in and out of the news, but it made it in because of the fact that it took me back. And like I said, this is Black History Month, and that's my Black History story. I was scammed by some Nigerians, and it makes you kind of think of some of the stories that you see. If you think that story is sick, then go to some of the Black History stories that have been making it in the news. There's also a story that made it into story number one that talks about the Coast Guard guy. And I'm telling you, story number one, when it comes to military families and military people, they said that this guy wanted to go on a mass killing spree, and he has some political figures on his hit list. And I'm telling you, folks, please, please, if story number one does not touch you in the heart, try to show some love to the veterans and the people who signed up, because I've often heard women say they would rather not date somebody who's been mentally changed by the military. So that story number one crept in to show Americans that we cannot forget about those who sacrifice their time for the greater good of this country. And yes, even as a veteran, and as a humble veteran at that, to say I was pretty banged up. I did get scammed. It's been a hard knock life, and I don't think every veteran should feel like that. So story number one is not only a story from the heart, but it's just to show you that please, I hope it stays in your mind to not forget about the veterans out there, because they're struggling, and when you see them making it in the headlines when they're suffering, and their families, they need employment, they need jobs, and they see things happening. Some of them can't get treatment. Some of them are at VA facilities, still on the waiting list, while everybody is enjoying the fruits of their own labor. There's some veterans out there struggling. So this Black History Month, I'm going to remember my own story at the end of this month, how I was scammed by some African brothers, Nigerians. So let's get to all right. Let's get to the meat of that's our story number one. If you want to contribute anyway, sentimental story, shed some tears. So let's get to the top 8. All right, that was story number one. If you want to contribute anyway, METHOD number 8 INC.com, methody.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. It's a frightening world we live in, folks. And I made it into the top 8 for the final story of this Black History Month. I was scammed by some Nigerians. If you want to contribute anyway, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, method8.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. Let's get to story number 2. What is the future of DACA, the Dreamers Act? A lot going on when it comes to immigration issues. We see the president is constantly talking about restructuring and changing up, making immigration a top priority. But a lot of people are concerned about the children that are already here, and that's what DACA kind of represents. It was basically a law put into protecting the children that are in the middle of the parents. And so these stories are really starting to surface. And story number 2 crept its way in because of the fact that there are a lot of Mexicans who are suffering. You know, when you look at some of these stories and you look at what's happening in the world, the worst thing you want to believe is that we're headed on a path to nowhere. But the fact is, there are some serious problems in Mexico. If you didn't know, there were 25 MS-13 gang members that were deported from the migrant caravan in Mexico, and they do not know what they're going to do. And they're talking about kidnappings. There was a woman that was actually decapitated. She was beheaded. She was kidnapped. So the fact is that there are some problems even in Venezuela. I was telling a friend about this earlier, about how the United States is sending in aid and they're refusing it. You know, when these regimes get so powerful and they have no direction to turn when things start falling apart, and then they start taking shots at if the United States, if people don't understand the governing system. I talked to you about story number 1 and about veterans and military veterans. People who've worked for the government understand that just the reality of the situation. You can probably see people who work for the government make probably a better decision than somebody who didn't work, because of the fact that they understand the difference between when you have, I guess it's reasoning. Common sense is the answer. So everybody's been painting this picture, conspiracy gurus, for years. And you're starting to see it come alive. And people are starting to see the importance of democracy inside the United States. And not just the structure of it, but capitalism, the empowerment of the citizen. And you're starting to see it take full scale in some of these stories, because when you look at a story like DACA, you look at how people perceive America. There was even a story about ISIS, a girl, a woman who she chanted "Death to America" and she went and joined ISIS. She went over there, found out it wasn't as great as she thought it would be. Now she wants to get back into America, and she's actually thinking about suing the Trump administration. So, folks, just to as the mediator and as the host of this show, I'm trying to get. My ultimate goal is always to stand between, to understand the right and the left and the different ideas and the different, but everybody, when you see people painting a picture of the country that you serve for, when you see things making the news about how America is a terrible place, I mean, yes, you go to some of these countries, it's great to visit, great to be there, but once you become a part of the system, a part of the structure, you can't help but to think, how do I empower myself? And the question that you'll probably see happening in the news and in the media is do these countries allow you to do this? Do they allow you to empower yourself? Do they allow you to vote? Do they have a system where you're protected by the police? Do they have a system in place where you can get an education, where you can build your own empire? And you read some of these stories, and like I told you, when I was getting out, I tried to apply for a job at everywhere. I couldn't get a job nowhere. At McDonald's, I couldn't get a job. At Burger King, I couldn't get a job anywhere. But I did not give up. I went out constantly. I took the civil service exam and finally was able to get to the post office. But that's just my story. But there are a lot of people who give up, who don't feel like they can do it in this democracy. So when you see stories like story number 1 and story number 2, and my own personal Black history story that I share with you out of confidence, I hope you don't make fun of me, but yes, I did get scammed before, and it was a terrifying experience being that young. I thought I was going to be locked up forever. But this is what happens inside of a system that we live in. Things happen, and you rebound, you find a way. But it's a good thing that I was able to rebound and I was able to be determined. I had to encourage myself. I went to the VA classes, I went to the Veterans Affairs. So now we have problems where people want to become citizens. So should there be a pathway, or should people be allowed if they have something to offer, or should there be some type of citizen swap? But this is what the big gripe is about, is because a lot of resources in a lot of countries have not been fulfilling their duties to their own citizens. So these citizens have felt obligated to get to the United States. And this is why story number 2 crept its way in. What is the future of DACA? What is the future for immigration, period, in the United States, especially if they do decide to build more of a wall, added on to the wall that's already there. If you want to contribute in any way, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, methodating.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. You're in the mediator with me, Brian Westward. It is my supreme duty to give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week. There's been some odd stories that have made it into just in the news this week. There was a story about a guy. I guess they were talking about the guy who made up the story about being lynched. But I did not. That story did not make it into the top 8. The level of importance, but just a lot of weird stories about things. But story number 3, leading into story number 3, like I said, if you want to contribute, or if you want to see the show during the week, if you can't catch it today, or if your signal's not strong enough, I do upload the story during the week. So you go to the website, you can go there, visit. You can view stories that almost made it into your own research. That's METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. I go through over 50 to 200 stories a week to present to let you know which stories are circulating, which stories are just important this every week. So if you want to contribute or be a part of it, all you have to do is visit the website. But story number 3 leads into more of a problem that we're having that's surfacing, that just builds up. And the story number 3 is women in a past and present struggle with oppression and life-changing choices. Folks, I've seen so many stories that made it into the news that are shining a lot of light on women. And final show for Black History Month, so I want to I've shared my own story. But in this struggle, I was not married. I was single at the time. When I was, if you just catching the show, I shared a story about when I was scammed when I got out of the military. And that was story number 1. I got out and I couldn't find a job, and I ended up getting scammed by these Nigerians. And this is African people. This is African American History Month. There's some odd stories to do, so I figured I'd share my own story. And so, but the thing is, my mother was always there. and she comforted me. My sisters, and they understood it. I got my hopes up. I was a man trying to provide for his intermediate family, and I got the loose end of the stick. And but the fact is that some women, what I've learned in these stories that have been going on, have been there's been some stories that have been surfacing about abortion and about women from other countries, especially Saudi Arabia. There were some stories that surfaced about how these sisters have risked everything to flee from repression. And there's just been a lot of stories centered around women's issues. And this is why story number 3 may gain some steam, because women are developing a place not only in society but in just power positions. Women have always played a part in the upbringing of every nation, but there is a evolving I say platform or game to where there is a section of society that is placing the woman against the man. And that's why this story is interesting, because if you look at the past and present struggles that women have had, is women have to care for children, and their abilities are still there, but now that everything is everybody's shooting for this equality thing, it's becoming a really interesting story because of the fact that you're seeing them make a lot of headlines, and you're seeing them affect the lives of a lot of powerful people and becoming powerful themselves. So men are having a lot of problems because men like women and women like men. So they're developing these relationships where they're able to bring people with empires. You just saw what happened to the Patriots owner. So these men are making decisions about their sexual beast, their sexual nature. And it's and then you go to other countries where women are oppressed. They don't have a lot of life, resources that they can do. Their husbands are supervising them, and their religion, their beliefs. So in America, we are developing this new atmosphere where it's becoming a normal part of society to where they're placing the women against the men. And I don't know how much good is going to come out of this, but this story is gaining steam because of the fact that the Trump administration is clamping down on federal funding for places like Planned Parenthood, and they're not allowing certain women to get abortions, and they're trying to change some of the laws. And the fact that you just had almost 50,000 women who died at the hands of a male relationship last year. And the fact that they're still passing away. Back in the day, men were not allowed to. We had to have some type of, what I believe they call it chivalry, or where you be nice. I hope I pronounced that right. You be nice to the girl. You open up the door for her. Now men are not only beating women, but they're still beating them. They were beating them back then, and so women are creating not only getting in power positions, but they're able to design laws for themselves. And story number 3 is not only just actually it's stories about women's issue have been rising and rising and rising, but they're reaching their peak because of the fact of what we call somebody has been abusing the system. And it's changing, and these women are creating a voice. Women from Muslim communities are empowering them. They're trying to get it. They're waving their hands up, saying that they need help. And if somebody's got daughters out there, and you're in a relationship and you have sympathy for females, they're fighting for not only just a place in this world, but a lot of them want to be heard. And you see it happening where a lot of women are choosing not to engage in relationships, but they're choosing their careers over the traditional family atmosphere. And some people are wondering if this is the right way to live. So story number 3, when you talk about women's past and present struggle and how they have been oppressed, and they're making some life-changing choices, and they've been making the choice, some of them, to not bring past life into this world after they've made a decision. So they're saying that men don't have a right to tell them what to do with their bodies, but the fact is that they're getting pregnant, and it's causing a lot of confusion because they don't want to bring the child into the world. So story number 3 is gaining some steam because this administration is right. The Republican Party, there's right on the Democrats. People who are pro-life. They're bringing these issues to the forefront. So story number 3 may gain some steam. And the fact that, like I said, what would the world be like what would the U.S. be like if women were still not even allowed to tell men what to do or allowed to make decisions like they are now? If you turn the tables around in my situation, like I said, when I was scammed, I had no comforter. I was not married. I had to go to my sisters and my mother. So women do play a big part in society. And this story number 3 is they're fighting for the right to make decisions about their body. But there's a problem because of the fact that sometimes they get pregnant when they make the wrong decisions, but they want to plan everything and they want everything to be proper. That's leading us up to our grand point, which is the climax of this show, which I'm going to get to shortly. If you want to contribute anyway, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West, where I go through the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week, stories that may affect you, giving you a neutral, different level playing field where I try to stay in the middle and see which side is right and which side is wrong. But right now, if I'm right, I don't want to be wrong, so I'm going to stick with the right because there's some things happening inside of the news. And there's some people making some amazing decisions. This is a world where we all want to be free to make our own choices. We all want to better ourselves, but there's some people being caught in the crosshairs of just wanting to not only better their lives, but they're sacrificing to get to that better life. And sometimes they sacrifice the children in their womb to have a better life. But the question is there something controlling this? Is there a supreme God in heaven, which I believe is something is controlling this atmosphere? Does something whisper in our ear? Some divine voice giving us direction when we make the wrong choices? Will we ask for forgiveness? Does somebody hear our voice? Myself, like I told you, I'm not a perfect person. I struggle like everybody else. But I as a veteran, if you just tuned in with story number 1, I have some struggles getting to this position in life where I still haven't achieved my fullest potential, but I'm trying. I'm trying. But the thing is that it at the end of the night, when I was on my knees and praying to God to help me, was there something happening? Was there some divine intervention going on? Was there some creator in the universe telling me, even when I was on active duty, injured? And these are questions, and this is Black History Month, so I figured I'd tell my own little story in this last. I'm an African American, and like I said, I was scammed by some African Nigerians. But the question is somebody watching over us as Americans, especially when it comes to protecting the divine laws of the Constitution of the United States? It says that the founders believed in God, and God we trust was in the motto. So let's examine this as we get to story number 4. If you want to contribute anyway, if you want to help out, if you want to assist me, all you have to do is visit the website, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. And you're in the Mediator with me, Brian West, where it's my duty, my supreme duty to give you top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week. I'm not here to hurt you. Let's get to story number 4. Is Planned Parenthood a good idea or not? And like I said, folks, something magical can happen and the brink of failure. And I the whole show has been based on that simple thing, or these stories that made it to the top 8, is that it's something when we make decisions or we choose in this life, or do we have a choice? Are we just on some path where we're just being guided? Is there a source? And if you've never heard of this Planned Parenthood, it's about planning for your life. It's a design where you give people who are less privileged or who don't have a lot, who are in poverty, you give them the choice to, you give them the ability to choose their own destiny. They could choose to abort or abort a child. They could choose to sue Planned Parenthood for child support. That's actually a story that made it to the top. I came across a story where a couple is actually trying to sue Planned Parenthood because their birth control did not work and failed. So then you have an administration who gets in and they say where there will be no federal funding to a place like Planned Parenthood. And then you have a guy like Tom McCluskey, Vice President of Government Affairs, saying that abortion is not a part of family planning. So disabled, disabilities, people who are born into the world and who don't have all of their cognitive senses and they want a chance at life. We're brung into this life, and you can learn something from our mistakes as human beings. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I had some problems when I got out of the military. I got messed up. I lost some brain function. I had to get it back. I had to work hard. I had to go to classes. I had to relearn a lot of things. And I got scammed by some Nigerians. African American History Month. This black on black crime, if you want to call it. It has to stop somehow. But I ended up getting scammed at a young age. I put trust in this email, this phishing email, and I got scammed, believing that I was being helped by somebody from another country. I inherited some money. I believed it. So the fact is that I prayed, and I thought that maybe there is something happening in this life that can help me. And I ended up talking, and I talked to my mother, but my mother was a communicator, and she told me about my mistakes. But some people have got the idea that they want to take these choices into their own hands and they want to plan their life. And it creates a problem because we have a problem with the consequences of our actions that we call a conscience. And we have a conscious mind. So we have this conscience telling us the difference between right and wrong constantly. We have people we appoint in office. We have decisions that we make in life that we have to deal with. And some of us have consequences that we have to face. And some of us make the decision not knowing the history or not doing our research. So where we're at right now is in the ball field of politics and democracy, is the fact that capitalism and the normal rules of empowering, making yourself better, are in danger because people have different ideologies, different beliefs on how the government and how all of these laws should protect people who want to do it the right way, or who are working hard and wanting to do the right thing. So we're almost to the climax, folks, and we're in the midway point. If you want to contribute anyway, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, Method80.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. You're the mediator with me, Brian West, where I'm giving you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it throughout the week. Like I said, if you want to contribute anyway, if you want to help me out, I go through 250 stories a week. A lot of stories, and I have to analyze the right, the left, and I have to stay in the middle, keeping things neutral and make sense of it all. And the mediator to give you a direction to take this week, to give you some talking points, give you some ideas, give you some reasons to stay in the fights, reason to stay alive, reason to choose life. So now we're at the point where we're at story number 5, where we have story number 5, which made it in, is outside of our normal conditions, which is why an outbreak could still catch us off guard. Now, some people wonder about diseases, and we wonder about the consequences of our choices. And there were some stories that surfaced in about HIV, an HIV data link, 4 Wyoming school closures closing after a meningitis cases have been confirmed, and the fact that we still don't know a lot about marijuana. So the whole show has been based on the consequences of our actions, the choices that we make, and the fact that we live in a democracy, and the fact that we temper, we experiment with things, not knowing if there's going to be some consequences. So, do we know enough about marijuana? Do we know enough about medicine that would protect us? And are these diseases caused by bad choices? These are questions that you have to ask yourself. Is the fact that women are not bringing children into the world, or if they're doing things unethically, is this causing what they call in rules of religion karma? Is this coming back on the United States? We don't know. So the thing is that are our decisions leading up to something that could cause mass catastrophic failure? And is the society that we live in that are causing us to lose trust in our own will to have decisions in our own life, is it causing us to stray off the path, which is maybe righteousness or a right way to live life? Or is the energy that we're not letting come into the world, is it going somewhere else? Is it taking the form of diseases? There's also some stories that serve, like I said, those voices that you hear your conscience telling you the difference between right and wrong. Where could they come from? Doctors have been prescribing fentanyl. This story crept in to wrong patients for years, the studies find. Another story that surfaced in is related to headline number 5 that made it in is KFC sickens 247 in Mongolia as inspectors reportedly find E. coli and soda bacteria in water. So, the fact that things happen in Mexico, these people have no home, they have been, their communities have been flooded with crime, corruption, drugs, they've infiltrated the United States. All of these bad decisions are leading and affecting everybody in like a ripple effect kind of a manner. So it's almost like the question is of if a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody around, does it actually fall? And we're learning some amazing things about not only science, not only about human behavior, but about how nature works. And we have to ask ourselves is nature evening itself out? Is it evening out? When you look at climate change, global warming, the decisions of public officials, people we put in leadership positions, the dialect, the language, the domestic violence, the fact that people cannot take care of themselves, they're homeless, the fact that the wealthy and taxing the rich and all this trickle down economics and people talking about socialism and the fact that but is there a government like the United States that could possibly work and could work if you do the right thing? That's pretty interesting. Which leads us to story number 6. If you want to contribute anyway, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, method80.com. If you want to help me out in any way, all you have to do is buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. Our book of the month is Trouble Don't Last Always, in honor of Black History Month. I have to find, I'll get the author's name for you. It was available. Somebody actually bought the book, but that's our book of the month is Trouble Don't Last Always. And it's a book about, family when they were freed from slavery. They migrated up north and they wanted to get to Canada to be free, to get away from their problems of down south when they were freedom. But I'm pretty sure everybody knows the story by now. When they said that slaves were free, they were no longer slaves. A lot of them did not know what to do. Some of them came up north, some of them got caught up, some of them tried to escape, and it was brutal. But some stories are surfacing in, not only just about our decisions in the past, but the fact is that we're reaching what they call the equilibrium in business, where some things, the balance, and things are balancing themselves out. It is becoming well known by some of the stories that we're seeing in the news. And some people are sitting back and they may be thinking that they are exempt, but it's catching everybody's attention, especially the rule of law, and the people who are in charge, officials, and the fact that like I said at the beginning of the show, when you feel that money can solve all of your problems, you end up with a rude awakening in the end. And sometimes it's good to have loved ones, people around, family members, friends, people who care about you. Which leads us to story number 6, is how this generation is getting caught up in past affairs. There was a story that surfaced in about students in South Carolina. They were told to pick cotton and sing slave songs on a field trip. Folks, we cannot all say that the past laws of this country were great. Some of the right mainly blames Democrat policies and Democrat laws, which is evident. They had some very strict laws when it came to African Americans mingling in with other races and all. So this is if you go across the globe, when a country is inhabited by other people, and they start building nation building, sometimes they know the cost of free labor. They know the cost of jobs, and some people especially in this country, take the rule of law into their own hands sometimes. And they back in the day, you could be hung, you could be, if you were not a certain color. So there were some things that happened in the past that has people have been trying to overcome for years, have tried to take better. We talk about the KKK, stories surfacing in about an Alabama newspaper editor calling the KKK to lynch Democrats. Then you have a story that surfaced in not only just about past things that are catching up to this new generation. Vietnam, when you had Agent Orange, and they're saying that it's affected the birth of a lot of children in Vietnam, and how these children have come out with birth defects. So we're at a point right now where things are changing, and survey shows that even millennials and baby boomers feel that home ownership is harder now than it was before. So the past is changing. Like I said, we're on a course somewhere. We're going in some direction, and that's why I hope I can give you some hope in this show. But there's a lot happening in the world. But some of these stories that are surfacing in, like story number 6, this story almost made it into the top 2, is how this generation is getting caught up in past affairs. Some of these kids don't know what's going on. Like you have the kids with the MAGA hat. They're getting caught up in the media attention of believing that when you look at the Native American, and they were talking about the Black Israelites, and then you had a story about an African American who's mixed from Chicago having the news. These stories are making it into the top headlines. And people are wondering, where are we headed, and why are these past affairs constantly catching up with us? Like I said, a story about students in South Carolina school told to pick cotton, singing slave songs. So we're headed somewhere, and so many different avenues, so many different roads we can take. Some of us look back and we don't want to look back. We just want to look forward. Some of us don't want to be accountable for the decisions that we make in this life. Some of us think we will never be accountable. Even when I talked about the Coast Guard official, the officer, this man was plotting on killing everybody, and he spoke about white supremacy. So these stories are surfacing in the news, and it's creating a lot of different effects. It's African American History Month. I told you, I've been a victim myself. I was scammed. I thought I was going to be a millionaire, and I thought this money was going to help me. I thought it was going to solve all of my problems. Growing up in poverty, growing up not being, but I leaned on, and I went to school. I got a job at the post office, and I was finally able to work. Didn't have a lot of schooling, so I had to go back to school. I had to learn a lot of things. Got injured on active duty, and it's led up to this point right here in mediation. So the fact is do our choices, do we have a choice in this life? Is there a conscience telling us the right and wrong things to do? And is this conscience leading us to the right, which is sanity? Or is it constantly leading us to the left, constantly trying to find our place in this world? Which leads us to the top 2 stories that made it to the media this week. If you want to contribute anyway, you're in the media with me, Brian West, where it's my duty to give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week. If you want to catch the show, if you didn't catch the first half, if you want to tune on to our website, the show is usually updated in our YouTube feed online during the week. So if you want to check out some of the stories that almost made it to the top 8, all you have to do is visit www.methodinc.com, methodinc.com, which leads us to the top 2 stories that made it to the media this week. Story number 7, how do we as humans get caught up in the sex trap? Folks, we are a natural species that wants to feel good. And there are stories that are surfacing, stories that have been surfacing for years about the misbehavior of people in their sexual nature. Sex is not a bad thing, but it can be bad depending on your position in life and your fashion, which you prefer. In some countries, they allow adults to mingle with minors. Men are allowed to marry women at 11 years old, but in the United States, it's considered against the law. And like I told you, each of these decisions, each of these bouncing and trying to dodge the law, have led people down a scary and a terrible path to some wrong decisions. And sometimes they regret these decisions. Sometimes they have to face jail time. I told you about the New England Patriots owner, how they caught him in a sex ball, and he was in a Florida sex ball. Then you have R. Kelly, you have Bill Crosby, so many figures throughout that have been making it into the headlines, getting caught up because they have this beast inside of them. We all want to have pleasing. We all want to be pleased. Sex feels good. It's a good thing, but it can really, really change the course of our plan in this life, which is our plan to be responsible, our plan to be financially independent, our plan to be great. So story number 7 leads us into the top story that made it to the media this week. But it leads us to ask the question is, our choices, are we being guided, or the problems that we face as children, by us not exploring our options of counseling and talking about them and confessing not only just our problems, but our, what they would say in the church, our sinful nature, if it is. Is there something watching over us? But there always is a better ending if you choose to go, or if you choose to believe in something greater. Something greater. Some people don't choose to believe in something greater. Some people still believe that the laws of this world govern the laws of the universe. Which leads us to this top story that made it into the media this week. If you want to contribute in any way, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, methodinc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. You're in the media with me, Brian West, where I give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week, that may be pivotal to your day, may be pivotal to your life, may be pivotal to your week. It may wake you up in the morning with a different attitude and change the game plan. Maybe you may start believing in something different. Maybe you may start believing in something divine. Maybe you may start believing in yourself. So it's my duty to stay neutral, not going too far to the right, not going too far from the left, but understanding each side, hearing them out. Some people are struggling with some serious things, and they're making the news, and they're affecting the lives of a lot of people, because some people are losing trust. Some people are losing confidence. But I'm here to steer you in the right direction, which leads us to the top story that made it to the media this week. Story number 8. Headline, are we headed in the right direction? Folks, there was some old footage that surfaced up about our good old buddy Bernie Sanders, praising breadlines, communist nations, basically talking about showing favor to people who are in leadership positions in socialist countries, communist countries. And he was able to raise $6 million for his 2020 campaign. Now, let me advise you that there was also some stories that surfaced that Bernie Sanders owns 3 houses and he's making millions. Folks, the people who we place in these leadership positions, the question that we have to ask ourselves at the end of the show, this top 8 story, is, are we headed in the right direction? Trump officials tried to rush nuclear technology to the Saudis, House panel finds. So these people that we put in leadership positions, we know about Kim Jong-un, and we know that the president says that he has a positive relationship with this dictator. And the fact that in a leadership position, they have to kind of mingle with each other, keep the scales of the system in place. But we have to ask ourselves as a country and as a nation, when it comes to righteousness and the founding principles of this nation, of the Constitution, which were based on a belief of supreme power throughout the universe, that supreme power which people believe in to this day to be God, or a supreme ruler that codes us, puts us in the right paths and in the right places. Is there something telling us, or our conscience, even me myself? I told you, I was a victim myself. Getting out of the military, not knowing my place in this world, looking for a reason. So I was looking for my place. Did you know that U.S. hate groups have rose 30% in recent years? So we're asking ourselves, are we headed in the right direction? 16,000 workers will lose their jobs when Payless closes. GM restructuring. So many jobs being lost because of economic restructuring, economic changing, the value of the dollar, the fact that we may be consuming too much of the world's resources. Pentagon officials may have given out $280,000 in fraudulent bonuses. Barack Obama slams pop culture for I guess he's blaming them for the bad values that young men carry now. These officials, these people, they're living good lives, and all of these top 8 stories that made it in have been based on the fact that there's a generation that are watching, keeping an eye on our behavior as adults, as officials. Some of them, if they don't see an adult believing in something supreme, they won't believe in anything supreme. If they don't believe in themselves, if they see adults crumbling, if they see the fact of people arguing and people falling apart, there's no bonding, they won't believe in it. Young generation. And like I said at the beginning of the show, there are some veterans, some military people on the battlefield right now not coming home with all their cognitive senses. I was one of them. I still am. But I have to kind of encourage myself. Sympathy goes a long way, folks, but there are some stories that made it in that has me curious about the future and how story number 8 surfaced, the top 8 story. Are we headed in the right direction? Some local stories that made it in. Governor DeWine proposes an 18-cent gas tax increase. Another GM Lordstown supplier is announcing 73 lost jobs. YSU students dance to help Akron Children's Hospital. Those are the top 8 stories that made it into the media this week. If you did not catch the full show, the whole show is based off of top 8 stories that asks one question in the top 8 is, are we headed in the right direction? And do we need to believe in a higher power at this particular time frame in our history as a nation? As communism and socialism is trying to infiltrate our own rule of law. Is this the only way to get us back on course? There's lawsuits being filed, people believing the rule of law is going to change their circumstances, that money is going to save them from everything. If you didn't get anything out of today's show, you may have learned something. That maybe there is something controlling this universe. Maybe there is some divine power. Maybe some people have sold themselves to something ungodly. Can you convince yourself that? Do you believe in science? Do you believe in the universe? But folks, after reading some of these stories and some of the digesting and looking and searching for why human beings have to have laws and why we have to be governed by something greater, why we have to believe in not only just ourselves, but why we have to encourage ourselves, why so many people who are unfortunate need something to believe in. It's been a question throughout history for a long time is, why do humans have religion? Why do women and men need to get along? Why is abortion not good? Why are our choices always leading up to certain places, and why we may need to listen to that inner voice in our head trying to steer us in the right direction? So that's our show for today, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to contribute anyway, METHOD, the number 8inc.com. You're in the meeting with me, Brian West, where it's my supreme duty to give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week. A lot going on in the world, but the fact is where are we headed? And are we headed in the right direction, folks? I want to thank you so much for tuning to the Mediator this week with me, Brian West. Have a good weekend. Believe in something. And I wish you the best. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for tuning to the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'm out.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is